Hi everyone. This video is a book review about a book that I have had for over a year. I borrowed it from the library and I'll give it back soon, like next week. And the title of this book is Simeon's Story, an eyewitness account of the kidnapping of Emmett Till. It's written by Simeon Wright with Herb Boyd, or Herb Boyd. I really don't know which to pronounce. The reason I selected this book is because I have been fascinated about the Emmett Till case since I was 14 years old. I do have maybe two or three other book reviews about Emmett Till on this channel, so if you want to check those out, you can. Before I get started with my book review, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the cover, a little bit about the authors, and about the dedication at the front. And if you hear any type of noise in the background, tomorrow is the 4th of July, so people are shooting off fireworks. So you're going to hear loud booms. So the first thing I wanted to show you is the cover of the book. At the cover, we have Simeon Wright, if you can see it. I don't know. We have Simeon Wright when he was in 9th grade. The store next to him is Bryant's store, where Emmett apparently whistled. This little boy up here is Emmett Till. This right here is cotton, because Simeon had to pick a lot of cotton. And up here is a photograph of a house, which I think is Simeon's house. In the back, there is a photograph of Simeon and Herb. Simeon is the bald one. Simeon Wright was born in 1942. A major figure in the documentary The Untold Story of Emmett Lewis Till, he has been profiled in the Washington Post and has appeared on Tavis Smiley and Court TV. Herb Boyd has published 18 books, including We Shall Overcome, The History of the Civil Rights Movement as It Happened. He is managing editor of The Black World Today. Now, I don't know if Herb Boyd is still alive, but Simeon Wright died, I believe, in 2017. This book was published in 2010, so it is about a decade old. And it is dedicated to Simeon's father, Moses Wright. Moses Wright, if you've read more about the Emmett Till case, Moses Wright pointed out Emmett Till's lynchers during the trial. So you see a photograph of a black man standing, pointing his finger during the Emmett Till case. That is Moses Wright. It says, "To my dad, Moses Wright, this black man facing racism alone uttered these words when pressured not to take part in the trial of Emmett Till's murderers. I know one thing. I know I am going to testify. Whether I'll live, I don't know." Now, the whole, overall theme of this book for Simeon was to set the record straight. He said it a couple of times in the book. He wanted to set the record straight because so many people had taken the story of his cousin, Emmett Till, and had used their own creative license to create whatever they wanted to create. Some of it was downright lies. Some of it was misinformation. Some of it was hearsay. And by the time this book was being encouraged to be written by Simeon, he basically didn't want, he didn't trust a lot of people. Keith Beauchamp, who did the documentary about Emmett Till, he gained Simeon's trust. A lot of people were asking the wrong people. Not many people were coming to Simeon, even though Simeon was a witness to not only the incident at Bryant's store, but he was also a witness to the kidnapping of his cousin. So throughout this book, Simeon sets the record straight. In fact, in the back of the book, he has a section called Lies, Myths, and Distortions. It's epilogue. or an appendix. So let me see. The story begins talking about Mississippi, life in Mississippi. This is a photograph of Simeon when he was a child. He was like 6 years old. Yeah, 6 years old. He says that Mississippi was just as racist in the 1950s as it was in the 1860s with the KKK. And the night riders were part of their daily lives. He was born October 15th, 1942 in Doddsville in South County, where his dad was working at the time. So his dad, Moses Wright, had been a pastor for a long while, but by the time Emmett Till had come to visit, he wasn't in, he didn't really have his church anymore, but people still called him preacher. So his dad instilled with him a sense of pride and fearlessness and religion. And that was his father, his upbringing. His mother was a very sweet woman. She didn't want to pick cotton because all the children had to pick cotton. The daddy picked cotton, and she's like, I'm not about to pick cotton. I'm just going to take care of the household. And that's basically what she did. So his family life was a healthy family life. His parents were healthy, non-toxic, loving Black couple. He had 11 brothers and sisters because his father had a wife before his mother. So his father had a wife named Lucinda, and she was actually the one that got him on the path of preaching, on the path of Christ. But Lucinda ended up dying of influenza and leaving him with 4 children. So Simeon, he was either the youngest or one of the younger siblings or children of his mother, Elizabeth. I cannot find it in this book, but somewhere I read in this book that his mother met his father when his father was going around speaking. So this is a photograph of his mother, Elizabeth Wright. I think she is light enough to pass for white. And this is a photograph of his father, Moses Wright. Most of the photographs that we see of Moses, some people call him Mose, some people call him preacher, but most of the photographs that we see of him, he's wearing farm clothes. So they were trying to portray him as some type of country bumpkin when he was actually a prolific speaker. So Simeon mentions that in the end. He discusses about the unfair treatment of Blacks in Mississippi, how if you didn't know the rules, the unspoken rules of racism in Mississippi, you could find yourself in a very dangerous situation. You could end up lynched over the smallest thing that you wouldn't even think would cause any harm, but it would. He talks about how the white bosses would take money from their employees that were sharecroppers. They would, I guess, rig the scales to make it seem as if just to cheat Black people out of money. They would treat them like they were subservient or something of that nature. It was all a fear-based control. So when Emmett Till came to Mississippi, he had a whole different mindset because Emmett Till was from Chicago. I mean, they had racism in Chicago, but it wasn't at that level as Mississippi was, I guess, in the forefront, in front of your eyes with the signs and don't touch this and don't do that, Simeon talks about how him and his brothers and sisters would just pick cotton. They would go to different places, have fun, swim, eat food, raise animals, and just basic, I would say basic farm life. He talks about the road that they lived on, down Dark Fear Road, and how dark it was. Just like, I would not want to live there. He speaks about the lynchings and people in Mississippi, Black people, who tried to get rights for their people, but ended up being murdered. Whether it was trying to register black people to vote, whether it was trying to get black people rights, they would just be lynched, murdered brutally. One guy was gunned down in front of the courthouse. Like, this is all bad. So he didn't trust that many people, He talks about his dad, said, "My people often ask if Dad was a pacifist and what motivated him to resist the draft. Because Moses Wright didn't he didn't want to join the military. He didn't want to go to the army because he said it was against the Bible, that you shouldn't kill anyone." And Simeon's book really gave me more information about Moses Wright. I mean, I didn't have that much information about him except for what I read in Emmett Till's mother's book. This is the only relative of Emmett Till that I know of that has written a book about the experience. Because as I said, Simeon was there. He was there when Emmett whistled, and he was there when Emmett was kidnapped. But anyway, as I was saying, his mother had 8 kids. So there were like 12 kids in all, which included Simeon. And even though they weren't like that wealthy, they had a healthy home life. It says, at home with mom and dad. So Simeon goes talking about the day that they went to the store, to Bryant's store. The night before, was it the night before? No, okay. They'd gone to Bryant's store. He says that Emmett was only in there for less than a minute. That all of the things that Carolyn Bryant said during the trial about Emmett Till running after her, putting her hands around her waist and saying, "How about a date, baby?" and all of these things, that it didn't happen. Now, if you had any common sense, like, you would know that that didn't happen, because that doesn't make any sense. Number one, it's outside of Emmett Till's character. Number two, if that was going on, there would be a whole bunch of noise and people would have come out of the woodworks to come save this lady. But obviously that is not what happened. He says that he went in to get Emmett, but he didn't see Emmett do anything. The reason that he wanted to make sure that he was with Emmett Till at all times, or the cousins, Emmett's cousins and Simeon wanted to make sure that they were around Emmett at all times, was because Emmett did not know the rules of Mississippi. And what I mean by he didn't know the rules of Mississippi, he didn't know that you can't say this word. You can't drop your money in their hand, like you push it, or just little subtle things, little subtle crazy racist things. Emmett Till did not know, because he was from Chicago, he was from the North. Even though they did have racism there, it wasn't at this level that was in Mississippi. His principal was a white guy. Like, it was, I wouldn't say kind of segregated, integrated, but it just wasn't the same. Even before Emmett came to Mississippi, his mother told him, "Please be careful in Mississippi. The white people down there are not like the white people up here. They're worse. If you had to get on the ground and beg for your life, beg for your freaking life, but come home." But he was a child. He didn't understand. And the reason they wanted to watch him was because he had done this, I can't remember what day it was, but he had set off some fireworks. To our dismay, Bobo, which was Emmett's nickname, lit some of the fireworks in front of the store. He went to Money to go buy some fireworks, bought some fireworks from Mr. Wolf's one of the 5 stores in the small town. I thought we were going to go back home and then set them off. To our dismay, Bobo lit some of the firecrackers in front of the store. I told them that you could not set off fireworks within the city limits. He wasn't trying to be funny. He just didn't know the rules. Yeah. So, when you have something like that, something as small as setting off fireworks in front of a store could get you lynched. Right now, ironically, there's fireworks going off right now. This is an integrated neighborhood. But just imagine it was a segregated neighborhood. And you setting off fireworks in the wrong part of town. You know what's going to happen to you? I don't think we want to know what could happen to you over the pettiest things. But that is how a racist mind works. It makes a small petty thing into something grandiose. If that's how you pronounce the word. He said that Emmett Till did whistle at Carolyn Bryant, but not directly at her. Like, it was just a joke. And he knows that this would step on some toes. Because in Emmett Till's mother's book, she says that he possibly didn't whistle at Carolyn Bryant because he had a speech impediment. He stuttered. He had to whistle to get his words out. So in his mother's mind, he had to whistle to get the words out. But Simeon says his mother was not there. I was there. I was there when it happened. You had only been in the store? Okay. We had been outside the store only a few seconds when Mrs. Bryant came out behind us, heading straight to her car. As she walked, Bobo whistled at her. I think he wanted to get a laugh out of us or something. He was always joking around, and it was hard to tell when he was serious. It was a loud wolf whistle, a big city, like, I'm not even going to whistle, and it caught us all by surprise. We all looked at each other, realizing that Bobo had violated a long-standing, unwritten law, a social taboo about conduct between blacks and whites in the South. Suddenly, we felt we were in danger, and we stared at each other, all with the same expression of fear and panic. And so they got into the car, and they sped off. They sped off. They were afraid that they were being chased. And Emmett says, please don't tell your father I whistled at that lady. He was afraid that if my father found out about what he had done, he would be sent back to Chicago immediately. It's just like, this thing was just a whole setup. Literally, it was like a fateful, divinely orchestrated setup. Like, every time I read, I'm just like, God, this thing, like, you know, where sometimes fate, you're just like, why did this happen? And then the more you find out about some type of information, it just sounds more and more and more like it was orchestrated. And even Emmett Till's mother mentions this when she was about to, I think she was like about to commit suicide. She just couldn't take the pain of what happened to her child anymore. And the voice told her that he was a sacrificial lamb. And at first, I didn't want to believe it. But now that I'm older, I'm like, you know what? I can kind of see that now. Like, I can't understand the workings of the divine sometimes. But there were so many opportunities where Emmett Till could have escaped. But it was like a blockage placed on everything. Because somebody didn't say this. Because there wasn't a door there. Because you were at the wrong place at the wrong time. But then none of this would have happened if it hadn't been for somebody so racist and immature. If you were mad at the child, all you had to do was make him go back and give an apology. Like, apologize to you then. Did you have to kill him? That's why racism makes no freaking sense. So a couple of days pass. They don't tell Emmett's uncle about what happened. It says, later that evening, a girl who lived nearby told us she had heard about what happened in Money and that trouble was brewing. I know the Bryants, and they are not going to forget what happened, she warned us. Her words renewed my panic, but all we did was to hope she wasn't right. Again, I did not sense the true danger Bobo was in. So on the last night, unfortunately, of Emmett Till's life, we went to Greenwood, which was the largest city in La Florida. They had a great time. They were just playing around, hanging out, just having fun, being cousins, being young. And then Emmett went back to the house. So as we all know the story about the abduction, like Bryant and Milam came to Simeon's house. But this is the first book I've seen that has a layout, a map of the house and the footsteps of the killers. And you can pause it if you want to see yourself. Oh, I can't see it anymore. But yeah, like it gave me a visual of what to look for. They came in. They went through the guest room. They were looking at the beds. They went into the other guest room. They came into where Emmett was, went to his bed, got him out, took him out of the house, path of the kidnappers, threatened his family, some freaking terrorists. Shoot. And they never saw Emmett Till again. Emmett Till's aunt, Simeon's mother, begged and pleaded with the kidnappers to not take Emmett Till. Like she just begged, she was just crying and just pleading for his life. Like, oh my God. She began pleading with the men not to take Bobo. I could hear the fear in her voice. She broke into a mixture of pleas and tears as she practically prayed for Bobo, asking the men not to harm him. The men ignored her, urging Bobo to hurry up and get dressed. My mother then offered them some money to not take Bobo away. It was now crystal clear to me that these men were up to no good. They had come for Bobo, and no amount of begging, pleading, or payment was going to stop them. Although Dad had 2 shotguns in his closet, the 12 gauge and a 410, he never tried to get them. If Dad had made a break for his guns, none of us would be alive today. I believe Milam and Bryant were prepared to kill us all at the slightest provocation, and I'm glad that Dad didn't do anything to put us all in danger. So they took Emmett away, and the family is just panicking. It's just really terrible. And the mother, Simeon's mother, ran to ask her white neighbors for help. When the man of the house, who was the straw boss man of our farm, refused to offer any assistance, it only compounded my mother's hysteria. She was completely mortified at his refusal to help. These people just some evil. I cannot understand how a person can be so evil. Like, I just don't get it. Even though I've read lynchings over and over and over, it still boggles my mind how somebody can just be so wicked. Like, you weren't even there, dude. Like, you could help. That's why she ran to the straw boss, because she's like, well, if another white man goes to these white men, then maybe I will get my relative back. Maybe they can talk some sense into them. But it didn't happen that way, because apparently with the kidnapping of Emmett Till, there was Milam, there was Bryant, there was possibly Carolyn Bryant, because they say they heard woman's voice, and it would make sense if she was there so she could identify him. And there were possibly 2 black men. Now, I don't think the black men would have come by choice. They probably were being threatened to help, but who knows. So Emmett's missing for a couple of days, and the entire family is just really stressed out. Simeon says that his sister lost 10 pounds in 10 days. They had all lost their appetite. They didn't want to eat. They were all just very, very mortified. They start calling people. They start just, it's very, very, very sad. So, of course, they discover Emmett Till's body, and they were trying to bury it in Mississippi, but his mother was like, no, you're not going to bury my baby in Mississippi. Simeon was the one that identified Emmett Till's ring. After presenting the summonses, the man pulled out a ring that had been found on the body and asked Dad if he recognized it. I spoke up. That's Bobo's ring. He talks about Medgar Evers, who round up the prosecution for the witnesses, and all of these different people that help to find witnesses, because if you're going to be a witness to something like this during this time, you're basically signing a death sentence. He talks about that. Now, Simeon did stay when they announced the not guilty verdict. Mamie, Emmett Till's mother, had left. She already knew what was up. So after that day, after the not guilty verdict, Simeon found his life completely changed. They had to leave Mississippi. They left everything behind. His mother had left prior to that. Like, she never came back. She just couldn't. I mean, who would come back? Like, who would come back? I wouldn't come back. There was a man I read a lynching about where he was dating this white girl. He left, I want to say East St. Louis. I think it was East St. Louis. He left. He was gone for a while, like a couple of years. He came back, and then they lynched him when he came back. If you're in that type of situation, you don't look back. It's like the burning of Sodom and Gomorrah. You just don't look behind you. You're going to be salty. Yeah. Simeon's life basically transformed. He went from picking cotton in Mississippi to going to the place that Emmett Till lived. And I think because of this whole change, well, I know because of this whole change, it put Simeon on a completely different path in life. Because who knows? What if what happened to Emmett Till could have happened to Simeon if he had stayed in Chicago or in Mississippi? Maybe, unfortunately, the fate of Emmett Till saved his family in Mississippi. You know, there's always this strange silver lining in things. What if Emmett's death had just saved his entire family's life? What if his death had saved the lives of future generations? Because his death was enough to put that spark of fire in people to be like, look, enough is enough. You killed an innocent child. What are you doing? It was an international uproar about what happened to this child. It's almost like Ferguson, like the Mike Brown lynching started the entire Ferguson movement. The Black Lives Matter and all of that is still going strong today. Even Black Lives Matter, which isn't, ours anymore, but that was started in response to, I think, Trayvon Martin's killing. So it's just young black people being murdered that started all of these different movements. And it's like one gets lynched, but saves countless lives because unfortunately they were a sacrificial lamb, even though I'm pretty sure none of them wanted to be in that position. So Simeon talks about his life, how when he moved to Chicago, they welcomed him with open arms. This is a better photograph of him. I think he went to, I want to say he went to Emmett's school, but I'm not positive. But his classmates basically embraced him. They accepted him as if they were his own, as if he was their own, as if he had always been there. So because of the new people around him, it helped him to heal himself of this tragedy. Even though it still is on his mind, or was on his mind throughout his life, this helped him to heal. This transition helped him to heal. He talks about the different movements that came up. Ironically, the house that Simeon and his family had lived in got destroyed by, I want to say, a tornado. The boss man's nephews, it was like the planter, the boss man, one of his relatives had moved into the house, renovated the house, and then they got killed in the house due to a storm. I'm like, shoot, they should have just torn the house down. Some places have so much bad energy that they can't even stand on their own. Because so much had happened in that house, even though it was a peaceful house. Just the injustice that occurred that night of Emmett Till's kidnapping, that house could not stand. I'm not saying it's karma, but reopening the case and exhuming the body. So there's this rumor that the body in Emmett Till's casket was not Emmett Till. They lied early on and said that the NAACP had planted a body. So they ended up getting DNA. I want to say it was from Simeon or one of Emmett's relatives, and proved that it was Emmett Till. He had died from a gunshot wound. To the head, and the manner of death was homicide. Now that's just awful. Like, that means he just got tortured. The autopsy results were given to the FBI, who turned them over to the state of Mississippi. The FBI was impressed that they had a solid case to charge Carolyn Bryant with manslaughter. But while the FBI was optimistic, there were indications from the media and elsewhere that members of the grand jury and the district attorney's office felt that there was not enough evidence to bring charges against Mrs. Bryant. So they kept trying so hard to put this woman in jail, and she just won't put her in jail. Carolyn Bryant is still alive. She needs to be in jail. They say she was an accessory to murder, which she was. As you know, if you watch my other video about Emmett Till, she's going to come out with a book that's going to be published after her death, like a certain amount of time after her death. So hopefully I'll be alive by that time so I can have a massive book burning of Carolyn Bryant's books and use it as toilet paper or something, because that's all that her words are going to be. But whatever. Bobo on my mind. He talks about the Till bill. In July 2008, I received a call from Alvin Sykes of the Emmett Till Justice Campaign. He alerted me that members of the U.S. Senate were seeking passage of the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crime Bill. The Till bill, as it was called, would create a cold case unit at the Justice Department to investigate unsolved civil rights murders that occurred before 1917. So the Till bill was denied for a while, and then it finally got passed. He said, Senator Dodd then explained that the Till bill had been held up in the Senate for 4 years, and he insisted it was now time to pass it. I learned that Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma was the lone senator blocking the passage of the bill by using Senate procedures to prevent it from coming to a vote. So I don't know if he's still in office, but I'm sure I'm going to remember his name. In the back, the last passage is Lies, Myths, and Distortions. One myth was that Simeon Wright's dad said "thar he" in court when he was pointing out Emmett Till's lynchers. He says, according to the story, when Dad pointed out J.W. Milam while on the witness stand, he said "thar he" in broken English. Dad's English was not broken. In fact, he was very careful about his pronunciation and his use of language. As a preacher, he was used to speaking in public, so for anyone to suggest that he spoke so poorly is crazy. He says that it was probably traced back to James Hicks, who covered the trial. Let me see. Said "there he." Now, what's ironic is that in Hicks' original account, he has Moses Wright saying "there he is," and then later he's like, he said "there he." Like, what is up with these people? What's up with these people? Anyway, even in the court transcripts, he says "there he is." And I know in one of my other Emmett Till videos, I think I mentioned that he said "there he," because that is all I had seen. But now that I know it's "there he is," I'm like, my mistake. James Hicks is also the source of another inaccurate story concerning Dad's so-called escape from Mississippi. So they say that Moses Wright, or the rumor was that he was hidden in a coffin, but he was not. Medgar Evers was never party to that lie, he says. The students also ask about the story that Bobo had bragged to us about his white girlfriend, showing us the pictures of them in his wallet. I tell them that if he had pictures of any white girlfriends, he never showed them to us. And I believe Emmett Till's mother had heard this too and said it probably was the white actress. I'm just like hearing multiple stories. Then, of course, there was the Look magazine article, which everything about that article was a lie, except for the fact that they had killed Emmett Till. That was the only truth in that article. You can read it yourself and be like, really? This doesn't make any sense. Speaking of stories, there's a play that had a run at the Goodman Theater in Chicago in May 2008 called The Ballad of Emmett Till by Ifa Baeza. I saw it and I was completely stunned by one scene in which I'm seen leaving Bobo and Bryant's store alone. Once again, a writer has taken liberties with the truth. Wheeler and I had actually talked to the playwright a few years before when she was researching Emmett Till's life. We met at the church where Wheeler is pastor. I emphasized to her that after I entered the store, I never left Bobo there alone. Then she went right ahead and showed me leaving him alone with Mrs. Bryant. Like, some people just, if history doesn't go the way they want it to go, they're just going to make history go the way they want it to go. But that's not history. That's a lie. With history, you're supposed to come with facts in the most unbiased way possible. And if you can't find the actual facts, at least give different perspectives that are closest to the truth, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable. That's why I really, really, really liked this book, because Simeon really did set the record straight. Like, he answered a lot of the questions that I had. It was a short read. It was an excellent read, and I'm very glad that I came across this book. So thank you for watching this video, and have a nice night, and yeah, happy reading, everyone.